People, picture this for a moment. You're the owner of a basketball team, and you finally acquire the most popular player. The number of people watching television has tripled, and the arenas are fully packed throughout the entire sport. Then, just a few months after a disastrous playoff series in which the coach of another club saw your young star being beaten, bruised, and wounded by her guy, you return and appoint the same coach to lead your squad. The question is not hypothetical. The Indiana Fever did exactly that. The floodgates opened when one, Sophie Cunningham, one of the league's most outspoken players, eventually spoke on a podcast and shared what every fan was already screaming at their television. Today, we are going through the whole story piece by piece. By the end of this, you'll comprehend why so many fervent basketball fans think there's a major issue in the NBA. Before discussing the subject, it's important to set the stage since you need to understand what the Indiana Fever chose Caitlin Clark, who genuinely embodies this league, in order to understand why supporters are so furious. In April 2024, Clark of the University of Iowa was selected first overall in the WNBA draft. This wasn't just any draft pick, either. Clark had shattered record after record during the previous 2 college seasons. At the conclusion of her stint in college, consider this for a moment. She was the highest scorer in NCAA Division I basketball history, both for men and women. More points than Plum, Kelsey, Pete Maravich, and everyone who has ever scored at the collegiate level. She brought a style of play to women's basketball that had never been witnessed at such a high volume. No-look passes startled defenders with 3-pointers that were well beyond the line. It was more like witnessing Steph Curry's pace and attitude were different from that of a traditional point guard. Consequently, she attracted attention with her. In terms of broadcast viewership, her college games smashed all prior records. More people watched her most recent game at Iowa compared to the men's championship that year. 18. The women's championship game saw an average attendance of 9 million. Since nothing like that had ever happened before, the Indiana Fever were more than just a basketball team. They became the most watched product in women's professional sports when she joined the WNBA in May 2024. Nearly instantly, tickets used to sell for $15 or $20, but now they are selling for hundreds of dollars. After more than 20 years of begging, rival arenas had to be moved to larger spaces to accommodate the numbers. WNBA players were finally allowed to fly charter aircraft with the league, and most sportsmen will tell you that one player is at fault because of her. This is where the story takes its first ugly turn, because it was evident from the beginning that this did not sit well with everyone in the league, not even close. Caitlin Clark would not be welcomed with open arms in a preseason game. The league's veterans had a phrase for it. They called it paying your dues, and it was clear how they decided to make her pay each night. In June 2024, a few weeks into her rookie season, Chicago Sky player Chindy Carter shoulder-checked Clark to the ground on a dead ball, meaning that the play was already over. When the whistle blew, she was hurled into the air. The league initially called it a common foul, but in reaction to public criticism, they elevated it to a flagrant one and popular slow-motion replays. Nevertheless, the message was already conveyed. If you value this information, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Surprisingly, almost 90% of viewers haven't. Have you already subscribed? It's free and just takes a moment, but it means a lot to us. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your support. Let's go back to the video. This is what happens to rookies in this league. Later that summer, Clark was slammed to the ground by another body check from Chicago Sky player Diamond DeShields. The collision happened far from the ball once more, and it was elevated to a flagrant after the fact once more. Then, during a match against the Connecticut, the same script, a different opponent, and a different night. Things worsened on June 17, 2025, when Clark was shoved to the ground after being stabbed in the eye by Sun guard J.C. Sheldon. Shortly after, Sun guard Maisha Hines-Allen caused the bench of Fever to explode. To protect her friend, after being dealt to the Fever during the off-season, Sophie Cunningham got up, ran in, and physically intervened. The sales of Cunningham's jerseys surged overnight after that one video clip of her defending Clark went viral. Supporters had been waiting for someone to speak up, and now they did. But Carter, DeShields, Sheldon, and Maisha Hines-Allen were not involved in any of those occurrences. Fairly similar to what happened in the 2024 postseason, as that's where the Real story begins. I want to take a moment before we arrive to talk about something that I think a lot of older fans observed, but that Caitlin Clark led the WNBA in flagrant fouls received during the period that the national media largely disregarded. Her inaugural season in 2024. I'll say that again because it's worth saying twice. The top overall pick in her rookie season received more flagrant fouls than any other WNBA player. That's unusual, regardless of their enthusiasm. Most beginners don't encounter that. You can argue if it was a coincidence or merely her playing style, or if it was something more deliberate. There will always be arguments over it, but the figure itself is just a fact that is shown in the box scores. This is also one of the reasons why fans started to doubt regarding the manner in which this league was managing its most valuable new member. The manner in which the remainder of the league spoke about her is another crucial element. Some players made it clear that they disliked the attention. Angel Reese, a rookie, used the phrase "special whistle" to describe what she thought to be giving Clark preferential refereeing. Several veterans talked about how Clark needed to become familiar with the league in interviews, earn her place, and be humiliated. Some of that can be attributed to the usual dynamics between rookies and veterans, which exist in any league. But in terms of its intensity, volume, and social media dissemination, it was unprecedented. In addition, later on, Sophie Cunningham would say that it originated from something completely unrelated to basketball. Game 1 of the WNBA playoffs opens on September 22, 2024, at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut. Round. The Indiana Fever will play their first postseason match since 2016 against the Connecticut Sun. On the opposite sideline, the head coach of the Connecticut Sun was a lady named Stephanie White. Remember that name. Since Stephanie White is the second main character in the novel, Caitlin Clark finished a straightforward. Less than 2 minutes into the first quarter, Sun guard Jonai Carrington made a pass to her teammate Aaliyah Boston. In an attempt to halt the pass while it was being attempted, her fingernail, which appeared to be a long acrylic nail, as her hand descended, it penetrated Clark's right eye, causing her to clutch her face and fall to the ground. There was no unpleasant cold. I want to be really fair now. The play was allowed to continue. After the game, Jonai Carrington and Caitlin, when a reporter questioned Clark, both of them publicly said they didn't believe the contact was intentional. She basically dismissed it the next day. You simply watch the play. It wasn't deliberate at all. She stated, which I will repeat, that it wasn't deliberate. As a result, I want to ensure that the facts, not conspiracy theories, exactly what we are dealing with, but this is also accurate. The fingernail scratched her eye, and she did receive a large black. In addition, she made 4 of 17 field goals during a 24-point defeat before leaving the game. For her team, regardless of whether the play was intentional or not, the physical toll was real. And that one image of the league's one of the most well-known pictures in WNBA history is of the first overall pick clutching her face on the court. The Sun won the first game, then they won the second. They eliminated the Fever in just 2 games. Playoffs. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were just sent home by head coach Stephanie White's team. Was watching the entire season from the sidelines. If you're an Indiana fan, you remember every second of that series. Fever fan. The bruising, the harsh fouls, the eye poke, the trash talk, and the feeling that your young star had just experienced. A meat grinder. You think, okay, we lost. We need to grow tougher. We need a coach who is going to safeguard our star player and, at last, advance this team. The Indiana Fever declared there. On October 27, 2024, it was decided to fire head coach Christy Sides, who had finished seasons 20 and 20. From the 1st and 9th years, she guided a team to the playoffs. She carried out her responsibilities by all standards. The front office, on the other hand, wanted more. They wanted a championship coach. Who did they hire? They were searching for someone who could turn this generational talent into a champion. So, a few days later, on November 1st, the Fever made the official announcement. Stephanie White was their new head coach. Stephanie White, in fact. Just 6 weeks before, Stephanie White had observed from the sidelines as her team dispatched. You're not the only one who finds it confusing that Caitlin Clark returned from the playoffs with a black eye. Fans of social media went utterly nuts. The hashtag started to trend in a matter of minutes, which many found astonishing. The same coach, whose defensive tactics had recently penalized their budding star, was chosen by the front management to mentor her into year 2. However, we must now stop and take into account the opposing perspective in order to be fair. Because Stephanie White is a basketball aficionado and her resume is hard to deny, she is not a haphazard hire. Born and bred in Indiana, she was a high school legend at Seeger High in West Lebanon. In 1999, she led Purdue University to the national championship, which is still the only Big Ten Conference women's basketball title. Championship. She then played with the Indiana Fever for 4 of her 5 WNBA seasons until moving back to Indianapolis in 2011 as an assistant coach, and she was on the team when the Fever won their only championship in 2012. She then led the Fever in 2015 and 2016 before rejoining the WNBA with the Connecticut Sun to coach Vanderbilt, where she made it to the semifinals in each of her seasons, finishing a total 55 and 25. She won Coach of the Year in 2023, one of the best basketball minds in the women's game by any objective criterion. Therefore, the front office did not view this as a betrayal. Rather, it was a return to home. That's the version of the story where the renowned Indiana basketball star returns to lead the team she founded. From the press release. The issue is that fans are present in the moment. Press announcements are not what they live in. Most Indiana Fever fans remembered their 22-year-old star kneeling and holding her face. As a result, when the announcement was made, the comment sections were unfriendly. At this stage of the story, Sophie Cunningham is the insider who finally started speaking, so things start to get really interesting. For those who are unfamiliar, here is a quick overview of Sophie Cunningham. She was the second highest scorer while playing NCAA basketball at the University of Missouri. She was selected by the Phoenix in the 2019 NBA draft. Mercury gained a reputation for being a physically tough guard who wasn't afraid to mix it up with anyone. In February 2025, she was traded to the Indiana Fever after spending 6 seasons in Phoenix. Suddenly, she shared a locker room with Caitlin Clark, and she was very clear about which side she was on. Cunningham was the one who got up and stopped the eye poke and shove right away. On June 17th, following that game, her jersey sales allegedly surged. She adopted the moniker Clarks. Fans started giving her enforcers. In July 2025, Cunningham and co-host Wes Wilson from the Bravo series Summer House created their own podcast, Show Me Something. In the first episode, she also doesn't hold back. She is asked about people who say Caitlin